Welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast
with our mom,
Misty Bailey. Tips and encouragement
for
real-life homeschooling
is headed your way.
Hello and welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I am Misty Bailey, blogger at Joy and the Journey and podcaster here at Joyfully Homeschooling. So today we are on episode 6 of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast, and we are going to talk all about homeschool curriculum. Before we dive in, I want to share 2 things with you. The first is if you are enjoying this podcast or you think you're going to enjoy this podcast, if this is your first episode, then I would love for you to head over to iTunes or whatever platform you use to listen to your podcasts and leave a review. Because the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast is new, this really helps bump it up into the ratings, and it helps other homeschool moms find this podcast. Also, while you're there, you can hit subscribe, and by subscribing to this podcast, it means all new episodes automatically show up in your newsfeed. You don't have to go searching for them or waiting until you see them on social media. They will automatically show up. So if you could do those 2 things, I would be forever grateful. So thank you. Today we're going to talk about homeschool curriculum, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to do this. I actually taped this prior and kind of thought I would break it down by homeschool year, but I kept losing track of where I was. So instead, I'm going to break down this homeschool curriculum by subject. So we began homeschooling in 2009, January of 2009, and Allison was 5, and she was in kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, however you want to look at it, and Kristin was only 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what curriculums we used through the years, what we thought of them, why we maybe aren't using them anymore, and then I'm going to get into what I plan on using in the 2018-2019 school year. So our very first year homeschooling, I only knew one other homeschooler, and she had older kids. Her kids were, I believe at that time, 4th and 6th grade, which to me seemed like super old. And she used Christian Liberty Press, and that was the only homeschool curriculum I had heard of. I didn't know any others. So, and we made the decision to pull Allison out over Christmas break. So all of a sudden my husband said, yes, you can do this. So I had to get curriculum. So we used that our very first year homeschooling, and we used Hooked on Phonics reading. So Christian Liberty Press included science, reading, math, history. It was kind of everything in a big box. And it was a lot of textbooks, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted our homeschooling to look like. So that first year we finished that, and then the next 2 years after that we went with Heart of Dakota. And I'm going to kind of just start off with these boxed curriculums first. So Heart of Dakota, we used Little Hearts for His Glory and Beyond Little Hearts for His Glory. And those 2 years of homeschooling with Heart of Dakota were some of our favorite years. I absolutely loved Heart of Dakota. I have nothing negative to say about the program at all. We loved it. I was able to keep my girls together for history and science, and I really think that for me, having that boxed program helped lay the foundation for me for homeschooling. I don't know that I would have felt as secure as I did in our homeschooling decision had I not have that boxed program with the teacher's guide. Heart of Dakota used textbooks like those that were offered in Christian Liberty Press, but they also included fun hands-on activities to help kind of make the learning a little bit more fun. So we ended up using some of those Christian Liberty Press textbooks, but Heart of Dakota also included, like I said, some fun hands-on projects, and it kind of made it more of a unit study approach instead of just like a dry textbook. And we really loved those 2 years of homeschooling. However, I ended up having to make the decision to break up with Heart of Dakota, even though I didn't really want to, because I broke the rules of Heart of Dakota. So the guides in Heart of Dakota are set up to where they fit, I think it's like 2 or 3 grade levels. And my youngest daughter, Kristin, is very intelligent. I mean, she's advanced. And so when I started this was Allison's official kindergarten year. So she would have been 6 and Kristin was 4. And Kristin kept up with everything Allison was learning. And I started Kristin in kindergarten at 4 and she kept up with it. So, the girls, they were on the same level in history and science. And so she went along with us for those 2 years. She just did everything Allison was doing. And she excelled. I mean, she enjoyed it and learned just as much as Allison did. So then when it came time to go to Bigger Hearts for His Glory, I got that box in the mail and I realized at that point that I was going to be dragging Kristin along. It was a lot more bookwork, a lot more notebooking pages. It was just a lot. And I realized that I had made a mistake by keeping her along with us for those 2 years. And not following the suggestions of the Heart of Dakota family, which is, it's Carrie. And, she recommends that you don't include younger kids at those young ages, even if they can keep up, because eventually, they're going to hit a wall. And I did not do that. And so, unfortunately, we ended up having to walk away from Heart of Dakota because I could have kept Allison in it and I could have started and used something else with Kristin. But I really, really wanted to keep the girls together for history and science. And so, we kind of ended up having to leave. But Heart of Dakota was a wonderful program. Like I said, it used the unit study approach. It included textbooks, but it also, really made learning fun. We did a lot of fun science experiments. It kind of interweaves the Bible with it. So, we really had our Bible, our history, our science, poetry. We did so many things with that program. And I really think, like I said, it really helped me lay the foundation and feel secure in my choice to homeschool. So also, I forgot to mention, before we went into Heart of Dakota, after the Christian Liberty Press, we did do a year of My Father's World. So we did My Father's World first grade. And it was a really nice program. They've changed a lot since then, so I'm not entirely sure what they use now. But at that time, they had a Bible reader and they did phonics. And the first grade program did not have a lot of history other than Bible history. So that was one of the reasons I ended up moving on to Heart of Dakota, because I kind of felt it was a little lax. At the time, not really what I was looking for, but the teacher's guide was amazing. It really laid everything out for you. And there was a lot of science experiments and hands-on learning and a lot of great book suggestions. They begin learning to read from Bible stories. And it sounds, it helps them with phonics. And it was really a nice program. It was a little lacking in math at that time. We ended up adding a math program to it. But again, it wasn't a bad program. It just really wasn't what I was looking for. So those early years, the best history and science program that we found was Heart of Dakota. So from there, I'm going to move on to what else we've used as far as history goes through the years. And after that, we ended up moving on to Mystery of History. And Mystery of History was a really nice program. We used it for, I think it was 1.5 years. We used the first book. And Mystery of History takes you through history chronologically. And again, I wanted to keep the girls together. And with Mystery of History, you can absolutely do that. It has recommendations for kindergarten up through, I believe even all the way up to high school. And it, they have notebooking pages, an audio book that you can add to it. And one of our favorite features about Mystery of History was the timeline. We still have the timeline going around our room. It's not a schoolroom anymore, but we still have it going around the room. And it was a lot of fun. The kids really, really enjoyed that timeline, and it was a great visual. We ended up not sticking with it because after we finished it, for one, it wasn't exactly my favorite history program, even though I could keep the girls together, and it did offer, hands-on ideas and stuff. But also, after that year, my girls decided that they wanted to separate for history. And at this point, Allison was going into 5th grade, and Kristin was in 3rd, I believe. I believe that's right. it might have been 4th and 6th. But anyway, they decided they wanted to separate. So we started getting catalogs in the mail because, at this point, I had been doing different conventions, and, you always get those catalogs in the mail from homeschool companies. And Allison discovered Notgrass history. So she absolutely fell in love with the looks of America the Beautiful. So that following year, we ended up starting our journey with Notgrass. And Allison absolutely loved America the Beautiful. I cannot say enough good things about Notgrass history. The textbooks are absolutely beautiful. I have a video where I kind of answer a lot of the questions and kind of give you a sneak peek into some of their textbooks, and I'll leave that link in the comments. But the textbooks are beautiful. They include literature suggestions so the kids can read real literature alongside the time periods that they're studying. It has a map book. It has a timeline book. It has a workbook where they could answer questions and do word searches and vocabulary terms and all of that. And it also includes Bible suggestions and creative writing. We don't use the Bible in creative writing, but we use the other components of the program. And it is just a phenomenal program. I plan, as of right now, on using Notgrass history for Allison through the rest of our homeschool career. Again, things can change. At this point of the recording, she's in 7th grade, but she really loves Notgrass. This year, she's using From Adam to Us from Notgrass, and it's the world history, and she's not enjoyed it as much as she did America the Beautiful. I think Notgrass outdid themselves with the America the Beautiful program, but she is enjoying it. America the Beautiful had so many fun projects. We made marbles. We did like a cupcake factory. We did so many things. I can't even think of them all right now, but I do have a blog post with some of our favorite projects, and I'll link to that in the comments from America the Beautiful. The projects so far and From Adam to Us, she's not as enjoyed them as much as some of the others, but we made a world around the world feast, including different foods from different cultures. We made a card game. We did something with marbles, like played a marble game. There's another project she's getting ready to do that I don't even remember exactly what it is, but it includes noodles and making some kind of a craft. We did mosaic art. And so, Notgrass really makes history more fun because it does include those projects, but it still has a textbook approach with literature, and it has just been exactly what she was looking for with history. So for Kristin, after that year of Mystery of History, we did a year studying the Little House on the Prairie books with Prairie Primer. And Kristin suggested this. She wanted to kind of just do history with me and her. And so we read through the Little House on the Prairie series, and we used the Prairie Primer book. And we did a lot of fun things with that year with history. We got the cookbook, and we made some different recipes from it. I ended up buying lap books. I think it was from Adventures in Learning. I believe that's where the lap books came from, but we bought lap books to go along with, to lap book along with our Little House on the Prairie study. We made some little traps. We really had a lot of fun studying Prairie Primer. It was one of those things. It was a very, very nice year for she and I because, like I said, we were able to just, me and her, dive into that history and read those books together. And it was a really enjoyable year. And it was nice for her to kind of have that year of fun before moving into middle school. So this year, that was last year. So this year Kristin started off with Allison in Notgrass history. And to say she was miserable would be an understatement. She is not a textbook person. She was not enjoying Notgrass at all, which really breaks my heart because I love Notgrass. I love the people, the creators of Notgrass. They're wonderful, wonderful people, and they're some of my favorite people in the world, and they just have such a heart for homeschooling. But Notgrass history did not work for her. So we ended up switching her over to Beautiful Feet books. And this year she is using History of Horses. And Beautiful Feet books has been the perfect fit for her. She wants to be a veterinarian, so she absolutely loves animals, and this allows her to study the history of horses. In the meantime, she's also getting geography. She's getting learning about different cultures. She's learning vocabulary words. It really blows my mind how much she is actually learning now that she is enjoying it. It has been the perfect fit for her, and we plan on moving her up into History of Science next year with Beautiful Feet books. So for her, as of right now, it's not the most economical choice for me, because logically you would think, okay, this child's using this history, so the next child is too, because I'm not buying 2 programs. And I could make that choice, but I'm not going to, because I think one of the things with homeschooling is you need to realize all of your children are going to learn differently. So what works for one child is not going to work for the next, may not work for the next. And that has been the case with my girls in history. So for Kristin, we plan on continuing on with Beautiful Feet books. I've also tried out the Beautiful Feet books elementary program, Early American History. We tried that with Daniel, and it is a wonderful program. They use great literature. But Daniel was not really ready for that structured history. We tried it a little bit last year, and we tried it a little bit this year, and he's just not ready to sit through those books. So for him, for history, it's not really been history, but for social studies, he's in kindergarten. We are using Schoolhouse Teachers, and we have been taking the unit study approach for him. So we have learned about things like our country, our state. We did a unit on jobs. We did a unit on community helpers. We have done a unit on rules, and we're just kind of taking that more relaxed approach for him. So I wouldn't really even call it history, but it's been more of a social studies approach for him in kindergarten, which is perfect. I mean, that's really what he needs. He is not ready to dive into academics any more than that. So it's been a perfect choice for him for kindergarten. So now that we have discussed our different history programs through the years, I will mark that off, and I believe I touched on all of them. So now I'm going to get into what we have used through the years for science. So the list is really short. We did the Christian Liberty Press, we did Heart of Dakota, and a little bit of My Father's World. And now we are with Apologia, and we have been with Apologia for a long time. We have used the Flying Creatures books. We have used the Swimming Creatures books. We've used astronomy, chemistry, anatomy. We touched on botany. Botany was not our favorite. It was the only program with Apologia that we have not enjoyed. And it might be because I can't even keep plants alive. I can keep plants, yes. I can keep children and pets alive. I cannot keep plants alive. So botany was just not a good choice for us. And my children are like me. We don't enjoy growing things, I guess. So that is really what we have used for science through the years. I cannot say enough good things about Apologia. If you go to my blog, findingjoyinthejourney.net /Apologia, I think it is, or use the search bar Apologia, you will come across all of the blog posts I have wrote about Apologia. I will leave the main link in the comments, in the show notes. But Apologia has been our choice for science for many years. We plan on continuing with Apologia through high school. Apologia has worked with both of my girls. We tried it this year with Daniel. We tried putting him with Kristin for astronomy. And again, as I said before, he was not ready for formal academics in that area. So we've used Schoolhouse Teachers for him as well with science. We've again done the unit study approach. So we have learned about sharks. We've learned about oceans, weather, seasons, things like that. And it has worked out really well. He did a unit on rocks. I do plan on putting him in Apologia next year, but if it does not work for him, if he's again not ready for the academics, then we'll use another year of just a more relaxed unit study approach. Daniel has ADHD, dyspraxia, and he just is not, he's a boy also, So he has just not been ready for more formal academics outside of reading and math. So I can't say enough good things about Apologia. Again, that is what I plan on using for science with my kids throughout the rest of our homeschool journey. So unless something drastic happened, that is what we will be using. So the next thing I want to talk about is reading. So for reading, we started off with Hooked on Phonics. We used this early on. Whenever I was in high school and then in college, I tutored kids at the school in reading, and the teacher at the time used Hooked on Phonics. So I was familiar with Hooked on Phonics. I loved Hooked on Phonics as a teacher, and I continued on with Hooked on Phonics with my own kids. So I taught both of my girls to read with Hooked on Phonics, the purple Hooked on Phonics book, kindergarten set. And I also taught at least 3 of my daycare kids to read with Hooked on Phonics. And then I tutored 2 other girls through the years with Hooked on Phonics. So that's 7 kids total that I have used my Hooked on Phonics set with. It is a wonderful program. The program I have has a DVD that introduces the kids to the different word families. And then you go throughout the book learning different word families like at, an, in, un, ig. And then they also introduce sight words throughout. And then they have the kids get little books at the end of each unit, and they love those books. They love being able to carry those books around and knowing that they get to read a book. So we also used Hooked on Phonics, the first grade program for Kristin, because with Allison we used we used My Father's World first grade, and it included a phonics program. So, but again, we used Hooked on Phonics also with Kristin and my niece. We used the first grade program with her as well. It's a green box, and I'll link to both of those in the comments. So Hooked on Phonics was the only reading program that we used for many years. Then Mr. Daniel came along, and for him, reading has been a real struggle. It has not been easy for him at all. We do believe he is mildly dyslexic. We have to have another screening for him in October, but he does have dyspraxia. So dyspraxia is a motor disorder, and his mouth literally has a hard time forming some sounds. He has been in speech therapy since he was 3 or 4, and he really struggles making certain sounds. So the phonics approach did not work for him at all. We have pretty much had to use the sight word option. So I tried, because I believe so much in phonics, I tried a couple different things with him. I tried the Easy Peasy all-in-one homeschool reading program with him, and it worked for a while because they used sight words, but it got to the point where it was getting to be too much for him. So then we tried All About Reading. All About Reading is great. It uses the Orton Gillingham approach, which you would think would work wonderful for Daniel, but it moved too fast-paced for him. We made it about halfway through, and we spent a year on that book, and I don't even think we made it quite halfway through. And again, it got to the point where it was just, he was getting to sounds he was physically unable to say, which for a child is very, very hard when the child wants to learn to read and their mouth cannot form the sounds. So we stopped using that program, and we ended up hearing about a program called Nessie. Now, Nessie is an online reading program. And when I first heard about Nessie, I really was like, no, I don't want him on the computer all the time. But then I kept hearing more and more about it. And my friend Mary Ann from Homeschooling with Dyslexia, she had talked about the program. And so I asked her about it, and, she's like, just give it a try, see how it works, So we started using it with him. And he has made, at this point, we started using it in October. I'm recording this in March, and he has improved 1.1 grade levels, which for him is huge. Nessie does these, it does these assessments with your kids as you use it, and it sets these targets for spelling and reading. And then it really makes it fun. They use the phonics approach, but they also really use the sight word approach. So Daniel does a little bit of both. He struggles with vowel discrimination, so even some basic CVC words are hard for him, But with Nessie, he's just constantly seeing these words. So he doesn't even have to try to sound all of them out. He can also just remember them by seeing them, which is really what he needs. We did have a reading assessment done with him, and that is what she recommended as well. So Nessie has been a lifesaver for us. It is not what I ever would have thought I would use for reading, because it is not textbooky at all. It is not full-on academic at all. It is just, it is honestly fun, and he really, really enjoys it. We are also using sight word flashcards with him, and he has now learned since October all of his preschool and all of his kindergarten sight words. And with that, we're just using the sight words every day. We're picking 20 at a time, and if he gets them right 5 times in a row, he knows them. If he misses them, he has to trace them with his finger and then write them out. I never had to do this with my girls. Reading it was easy for them. They just picked it up like it was nothing. Kristin in kindergarten first grade, was reading chapter books. My girls they were just avid readers. It was never a struggle. But for him, it has been a huge, huge, huge struggle. And Nessie has been a lifesaver. I cannot imagine where he would be without the program. They also have worksheets, so you can print off worksheets online, and there's tons of fun games, like printable games. I've shared a lot of them on Instagram, and it has just been a lot of fun for him, and that is what he needs for learning, because he struggles so much that making it fun is enjoyable for him. It's less of a struggle. He is just... I can't say enough about Nessie. And again, it's not something 5 years ago I would have ever thought I would use, but it has worked wonders for him. So that is what we've used for reading through the years. So for grammar, which kind of goes along with reading as far as language arts goes, we've only used 2 programs. We used Rod and Staff we used book 2, 3, and 4, and we started book 5. Rod and Staff grammar is Mennonite based. So it's not really grade levels. They just have these books, and they're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think is what they have. And we stopped with Kristin in book 4, and we stopped with Allison in book 5, I believe. Rod and Staff is a very rigorous grammar program. It has a lot of writing. They do diagramming sentences. We also used their spelling program. And again, like I said, it's a very rigorous program. We stopped using it not because it wasn't a good program, but because I needed a more independent approach, and because I noticed that a lot of what they were learning wasn't sticking from year to year. Allison struggled with, I think it was adverbs, recognizing adverbs, and I realized, even though it was a rigorous program, it wasn't sticking with her, and I'm not entirely sure why it wasn't sticking with her, but it just wasn't. So we ended up switching to Essentials in Writing. And Essentials in Writing is a DVD-based program. So you pop in the disc, and it teaches the lesson. The teacher uses a whiteboard, and then they go back to their workbook, and it doesn't take long at all. They do like 1 or 2 worksheets. And it's very independent. Right now, Allison is in 7th grade, and she's working on a research paper. And it really lays out exactly what she needs to do. We ended up switching Kristin to it this year after trying it for a year with Allison, and I plan on using it through high school. It's independent. I would not recommend it for younger kids. For Daniel, I'm not entirely sure what we'll use for grammar, since we're not anywhere near starting that right now. I don't think we'll use Rod and Staff because it's just not going to fit him. But I also don't think we'll start him in Essentials in Writing right away. I would probably recommend starting it in around 2nd or 3rd grade. And before then, for most kids, I would recommend, with my kids, I would have probably done the first Rod and Staff book. And then if I had a do-over, move them to Essentials in Writing, probably around 3rd or 4th grade. Like I said, it's independent. They pop in the DVD, and it has been a great program. They have assessments in it so I can record grades. They offer a grading program for the writing once they're in junior high and high school, so you can send off their writing samples and have somebody else grade them if you want. I'm not doing that at the time. I'm not saying I never will, but I'm not at this time. So those are the only 2 programs we've really used for grammar. Now for spelling, we are using Spelling Power. It's a big orange workbook. You only buy it one time, and do-over, if I would have known about it, I would have used it all along. It is really easy. They take an assessment and see how well they do with it, and then they get placed in a certain level, and that's it. I mean, you just keep going. They do one test a day that has a study approach. Afterwards, with this little workbook, it tells them how to study the words, and it is simple. It is easy. It takes like 5 minutes a day per kid, and Spelling Power has been wonderful. I will use it with Daniel. I think you can use it really with any kid, even if they have special needs, because it really it's a very simple program. They don't have like a word list that they study every week. They just take a test on certain words. If they miss 3, they go back and they study those 3 words, and then they retest those on the next day. So there's a lot of repetition, a lot of review. And I have seen a big improvement with both of my girls with spelling just in the short amount of time we've used it. So again, that is Spelling Power. So next, what else do we have? I think the only thing I have left to talk about is math. And our math list is pretty short as well. We have only used 3 different maths through the years. We started off with Horizons Math. And I left Horizons Math because the teacher's guide did not give enough information on how to teach certain concepts for me. And it just was, I struggle with math, so I struggle teaching math. So I needed something that really laid out exactly how to teach math, and Horizons did not do that for me. So we ended up switching to Christian Light Education Math, and we used it for quite a few years. I'm using it now with Daniel. He does wonderful in math. Like, I'm so thankful that that's something he does not struggle with. So he's in first grade math, halfway through the first grade math program, and we used Christian Light Education Math for Allison up through 5th grade, and for Kristin up through 4th. I believe that's right. With my kids, once they got to that age range, 4th, 5th grade, I switched them over to teaching textbooks, which is what we're using now. Allison's in pre-algebra, and Kristin's in the 6th grade level. And teaching textbooks has been phenomenal. Again, this is a program we plan on using through high school. It's independent. I'm a work-at-home mom, so I try to make grammar and math as independent as possible. And they pop in the disc, it grades it for them and everything. Half the time, if I'm completely honest, I don't even know what they're learning unless they miss enough of it that I make them I make them show me what they've been missing. So how we use teaching textbooks is the girls do their lesson, and then they bring the computer to me, and if they get an 80%, then that's it. They're done for the day. And 90% of the time, they score at least an 80%. If they get below an 80%, I go back and I look and see what problems they missed. If they're not really sure of the concept, I have them go back and do it again. I erase it and have them go back and do it again. And if I notice that there's a certain style problem that they're really struggling with day after day, then I will look at the problems myself. And then we will, kind of have a one-on-one session and go over it with them more along the lines of what they're missing, kind of break it down and teach the concept myself or my husband does. We've not really had to do that a whole lot. The biggest area where the girls have struggled is like in measurements. And so my husband's worked with them a little bit on that, and Kristin kind of struggled with fractions for a little while. But other than that, math has been seriously totally independent since they switched to teaching textbooks. Christian Light Education is great if you don't want the computer approach through high school, but like I said, we needed it more independent, and with Christian Light Education, the math itself was independent. I had to teach some concepts, but the kids' workbooks really laid out, once they were in 3rd or 4th grade, it really laid out, or 2nd or 3rd grade, what they needed to learn, but I still had to grade it every day. So teaching textbooks takes the teaching away from me and the grading, so it is a great program. Like I said, I plan on putting Daniel in it around 3rd or 4th grade, and that's whenever Kristin started it as well. And as soon as we switched to teaching textbooks with Allison, I think she was in 6th grade. and we've used it ever since. So that is it. Those are the curriculums that we have used through the years. If you have any questions about any of them or want to see any reviews, leave me comments, shoot me an email, misty@jointhejourney.net. I will answer your questions. I'm going to link to all of the programs we have used and different curriculum reviews I've done on these programs in the show notes. So be sure to go in the show notes and check those out if you want to see the reviews that we've used. Again, we've used a lot of different programs through the years, but there are quite a few that we plan on continuing with long term. And I think that with homeschool curriculum, it is the biggest tip I have with choosing homeschool curriculum is be flexible. Just because a program works for one child doesn't mean it's going to work for all of them. And don't be afraid to shake things up. If you find something you love and then it no longer works for your kids, it's okay to try something else. It's totally okay to try something else. I had a slightly mental breakdown whenever we left Heart of Dakota. But I'm so thankful that we did, because I have found programs that work great for both of my kids and now Daniel. And just be flexible. Be aware that just because a program's working now doesn't mean it's always going to work. If you are struggling with choosing homeschool curriculum and you feel overwhelmed and you're not sure where to go, I do offer homeschool consultation services. So you can find that on my store, jointhejourneystore.net. You will see what I offer as far as homeschool consultations go, and I can help you. I can give recommendations for different curriculums. I am familiar with a lot of them, even those I haven't used. I can help you narrow down your child's learning style, your teaching style, and help you really find a program that will work for both you and your children. So I would love to chat with you if you would like to look into the homeschool consultation services. So that is it for this episode. I am so thankful you have been listening. And until next time, I hope you head out